Meat. The story of meat. Have you heard of the phrase, "You are what you eat"? Nothing is as apt a description for this creature than that saying. Meat is the type of creature that used to be a person. Before, through unknown methods, they were transformed into an anomalous creature. Their behavior is still bound by their personalities. So these types of creatures with human-like behavior aren't bound to set patterns and instincts. It is what makes this class of creature unpredictable. Because like humans, they may react to stimulus in different ways. One day they could be good to people, another day they could be absolutely horrible. Something that for humans may not majorly affect others. Humans are allowed to have bad days. For anomalous creatures, they don't get to have bad days, because with their abilities, collateral damage is so much easier to do, because at the end of the day, humans are fragile compared to most of the things out there. So, a little into Meat's history. Before he was transformed into a creature, Meat used to be a butcher named Cal. He's a legacy of a long line of butchers in his family. That and ranchers. Because like the rest of his family, Cal was obsessed about consuming meat, from pork to beef, even going on to an annual hunting trip to catch venison. He loved to eat meat every single possible way, and had an interest in not only increasing his skills in cooking it, but expanding his palate. So one day at his butchery, one of his regular customers walked in, a hunter that was very good at selling Cal premium cuts of whatever he hunted in the woods nearby. He was looking forward to the visit because hunting season had just started and the weather was perfect for animals to be out in force. The hunter had to come to Cal because he found something he's never seen before and wanted Cal to see it. See if he was interested in a new animal. Curious, Cal followed the hunter to his pickup truck where his kill was resting under the top, keeping the sun off the kill. Looking under the top, Cal was amazed at what he saw. It looked like a deer, only the fur was bright silver. It almost glowed under the top. And the horns looked like they were made of crystal. It was only marred by the blood dripping from the bullet hole in its head. Cal did feel a moment of sadness for such a beautiful thing being killed, but he was even more curious about another thing. Not where it came from, or what it was. No, Cal currently salivating on how it was going to taste. How should he cook it? Should he sear it, braise it, or maybe cook it slow with some leeks and potatoes? He didn't even notice himself paying the hunter 4 times the usual price for a high-quality deer. He just had the hunter bring the creature into his butchery as he thought about the best way to cook his creature. Back in his shop with all his tools out, Cal was quick to set up the kill for rendering. Right off the bat, he noticed that skinning the creature was tougher than normal. If his knives were the sharpest they were, pulling the fur would have used a lot of effort. He did save it, thinking he can get the fur made into a coat or something. He also noticed the blood he was draining was bright red, almost as luminescent as the silver fur he just removed. But the body underneath the fur, it was perfection. He had to try some, and the meat, unlike the fur, his knives glided through them. He had a small slice off, and setting up his grill, he was quick to cook it medium rare with just the basics of salt and pepper. Taking a bite, Cal saw stars. It was a taste that he has never experienced before. He couldn't describe it, but with emotions and things he couldn't actually describe, a flavor that was beyond anything in his memory that he has ever eaten, like describing a color to a person who has been blind their whole life, what he was eating. Cal found that there were tears in his eyes and saw it was because he finished the sample, but he remembered that there was a whole animal in the freezer behind him, ready to render, ready for him to eat. So Cal closed up shop, and with the utmost focus he fully rendered the creature he had bought. As he did so, he noticed the creature was much bigger and much larger than a regular deer. Usually, from one that is around 120 pounds, he would be lucky to get 40 to 50 pounds of usable meat. But with this one, it was almost 400 pounds, and he was able to get nearly 200 pounds of what looked like edible meat, plus the bones for making stock. Sending a text to the hunter to let him know if he ever finds another creature like that again, Cal will pay beyond premium price for any more that he finds. After Cal closed the shop for a week, he spent the whole time eating that animal. After that, Cal closed the shop for a week and spent the whole time eating that animal. He cooked it every single way possible, and each method he used to cook and eat that animal caused a euphoric experience he had the first time. And when he ran out of edible meat to eat, he moved onto the offal. And to his surprise, he found that it tasted just as good as the edible meat did. So Cal continued to feast, not noting his skin changing color from pale to a bright red that matches the meat he was eating. He didn't notice his hair falling out or his eyes retreating into his skull. Even as the lids vanished, he ate because somehow he could still see perfectly. And when he was out of offal, he moved onto the bones and the buckets full of the creature's blood. Cal gorged himself as white streaks appeared all over the fleshy red and his body bulked up, growing from a solid 5'9" to almost 8 feet tall. Cal didn't feel his muscles growing denser and denser as his teeth grew harder and harder. He just grunted in happiness as the bones became easier to chomp on and splinter in his mouth. Finally, he was done, and he felt a moment of loss as he drank the last drop of the creature's blood. That had to have been the best meal of his life. And the odds were he was never going to eat something that amazing again. His stomach rumbled, and as he walked to the front of the store, his body reverted from the monstrous being he was to the human shape he was before. Only with a few differences. His hair was still gone, his teeth were ivory white, and he shrunk from 8 foot to 6 foot. He picked up a piece of jerky from his counter as he thought about opening the shop again. Cal hadn't noticed the transformation he had gone through and how he reverted. Too distracted by the memory of the taste, one he was still not going to forget. He took a bite out of the beef jerky and he moaned in delight. This was beef, but why? Why was it so delicious? It was like the best beef he had ever had. Cal again didn't notice his skin start to turn red again as he delighted in the new discovery. Maybe his taste was forever altered by his religious experience. As he pondered about what else things would taste like, a knock on his door shook him out of his thoughts. Even as he chewed and slowly changed again, he answered the door and saw that the hunter from last week was back. He seemed to have caught a deer, not like the one from last week, but he still wanted to sell. Cal moved aside and invited the hunter in for a drink. As he closed the door behind him, he had an idle curiosity about how the hunter would taste.